Good evening, everyone. Welcome to New Art Exchange Online. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Marcel. I'm the public program producer here, and it's my pleasure to welcome you once again to Kim Thompson. Introduce you, sorry, not welcome you. Kim is a Nottingham-based freelance artist, illustrator, and storyboard artist. Kim has conceived 2 life drawing workshops for NAE. We had the first one last week, and we are on to the second one today. These workshops are building upon themes of movement, identity, and personal narrative within the work of Phoebe Boswell. Hopefully, Phoebe Boswell's exhibition will be able to open in the new year, so watch this space. Today's workshop will be exploring identity via abstraction, using experimental painting, collage, and mark-making techniques as a way of documenting identity and portraiture. I'll let Kim explain you a bit more about the session today, but I just wanted to go through a couple of points first. While delivering content online, New Art Exchange strives to create a safe and secure environment where guests, staff, and audiences can work together confidently and in mutual respect. And one of the disadvantages of delivering workshops online is that we can't see you. So if you do have any questions for Kim or about the session in general, please use the chat feature on YouTube and we'll aim to respond to you. Without further ado, I hope you enjoyed this session, and I'm passing it on to Kim.
And if you were here last week, then welcome back, and thank you. And if you're new, then welcome. As Mercy said, this session is going to be kind of a fun experimental session. So the aim of it is, again, I believe there's no right or wrong way to make art. So I'm hoping that what people will take from this is just some opportunities to try out things that they've never tried before, some kind of tips and techniques on just making that first mark and feeling confident about the art that you're creating, and little bits of kind of art theory and technical skill for things like self-portraiture. So yeah, it's going to be a bit of a looser session. If you were here last week, it's slightly different in terms of format. We're going to repeat some exercises for the benefit of people that didn't take part in the last week's session. Some of it will be completely new, and again, I've aimed to kind of tailor this to different abilities. So if you feel that it's something that you've done before, then feel free to just kind of take your own route and dip in and out as you feel, and we've got the benefit of having a model, so perhaps you'll find that really useful. If it turns out that you haven't done any of this, then again, you can dip in and out and try things and just kind of have fun with it. So I'm just going to begin by talking you through some of the things that you will need for this session. So we actually, New Art Exchange kindly sent out a little set of materials for you to use as and when you'd like. You feel free to not use everything, but just kind of use what you'd like to use in the session. So first of all, I'd just say make sure that you've got a space that you can work in, which is kind of comfortable, in which you can kind of make a mess and not feel too kind of worried about it, and make sure that you're in something that, you know, I often think that psychologically, if you've got a space set up that you can make a mess in, then you kind of feel more comfortable to make the artwork. So that's important. Wherever you're in your home, just make sure it's cool for you to kind of spread out and have fun. You should have a selection of items such as, we've got some paints here, some coloured paper, some scissors, some Pritt stick, and some activity sheets which were sent to you in an email. So if you don't have those things, if you don't have the email or the activity sheets, then don't stress, because I'll talk you through those things anyway, but obviously it's just kind of nice if you do have them, and then you can kind of directly look at those things. And yeah, I always think it's useful to have your paper secured, or, you know, just have like a firm surface to work on. You can tape the paper down if that helps you, just so things aren't sliding around. And yeah, we've also got a Spotify playlist that I put together for these sessions. If you were here last week, then it's basically the same one, so I apologise for that, but it's about 10 hours long, so you may want to play it with shuffle, you may not want to use it at all. But it's, I think it's been sent via the YouTube link, so there's an opportunity to find it via that, or if you just want to go on Spotify and search for NAE Life Drawing, my name on there's Kim Thompson, and you can start that now, or you can start it for the kind of figure drawing part of this exercise. Some people prefer to work in silence, but I kind of like to have a bit of a chilled out soundtrack to when I'm making art, so that's just there if you feel that you want something that you don't want to have to think about, just to put on in the background. So that's NAE Life Drawing on Spotify. So we'll just get started, because there's quite a lot to pack in today. So for the first exercise, we're going to basically do something that we did last week, but I think it's really useful as a tool. I like to start most sessions this way, just to loosen us all up. And I think even if you are somebody who is already, you know, quite familiar with art and skills, it's quite nice just to do things that kind of remove that pressure of perfecting things and just loosen you up a little bit. So the first thing we're going to do is some automatic drawing, and if you're not aware of this, it basically involves, it's a drawing technique which kind of strips away one of your senses, which obviously it's your sight, so that kind of removes that preciousness that you might have when you approach drawing a subject normally. So when I say removing your sight, essentially we are going to be making some drawings where we don't look down at the page, and we either do them with our eyes closed or we just kind of focus on one particular person or object to make that drawing. So these work best if you don't cheat. So follow my instruction and you'll be able to see that we're doing them in the studio alongside you. I'm going to give you some directions as to how to make this drawing, and they're going to be really, really quick. So there's no right or wrong way to do this. You find your own path and you just follow my instruction and try your best to create an image based on what I described. So just to kind of show you and like have a bit of an experiment with the first one, if you were here last week, you probably know exactly what we're going to do, but have another go. Myself and Merce in the studio are going to do a really, really quick drawing with our eyes closed. So you can do this along with us. It's a really good way to just loosen up before the session begins. So if you take a sheet of plain paper, just one sheet, any colour, whatever you've got to hand, and some sort of drawing tool. So I've got some charcoal here. Just move that in so you can see what I'm doing. Just anything that you can kind of make a quick, loose drawing with that you've got on hand, whether it's your own materials or the ones that we provided. And yeah, so me and Merce set up to create some drawings along with you. And what I want you to do is, without looking at the page or with your eyes completely closed so you're not tempted to cheat, have a go at drawing a rabbit. And when I say draw a rabbit, that can take any form. So just a bit of advice for this bit of the exercise. Think before you begin drawing. So I'm going to only give you maybe 30 seconds to 1 minute to complete this, and I'm going to time it based on how long myself and Merce take to do it. So it's going to be super, super quick. And the most important thing about this is getting down the information that communicates to the person looking at that piece that it is a rabbit. So you may find this very strange if you've never done it before, because it is. And I myself, I'm a professional artist, I do it for a job. But you'll probably see that my rabbit doesn't look any better than anybody else's, and it possibly won't even look like a rabbit. So don't be daunted by it. Everybody's going to be on the same level for this part. So just to get started, make sure you've got your implement to draw with and a plain sheet of paper. And myself and Merce are going to be doing this, so you can either watch or you can take part if you prefer to watch just to see what it is we're doing. And we'll both have our eyes closed, so you can sort of see in the studio here, Merce's just across from me in the corner, but we'll not be cheating. Maybe you can monitor it and make sure that none of us cheat. So yeah, beginning now, close your eyes and do your best to draw a rabbit, any part of it, head, full body, just whatever it is to kind of make a rabbit, starting from now. So Merce, you done? Yeah. Okay, so if you stop your drawing now, put your pens down or your drawing implement. And so myself and Merce have just done our best attempts at drawing a rabbit. Do you want to bring yours over so we can have a look at them both together? So I think we did these in about 10 seconds, didn't we? That's actually, you've managed to get the whole figure in. I feel ashamed of myself for not trying. So yeah, hopefully you can see. And I think it's fair to say that they both look like rabbits. And it's interesting the things that people think about that come to mind when they're trying to document a particular thing to communicate this is what this thing looks like. So Merce's obviously got the whiskers in there. The ear is obviously the most important thing on a rabbit, so I think we both were just trying to get that information in. But I think hopefully you can see that it's just quite a nice exercise to kind of force your brain to think a little bit differently and just to kind of focus more on little bits of information that kind of signify that particular thing than just kind of dwelling too much on making things perfect and realistic. So now that we've done that first one, I think we'll have another go at one just so you can kind of have a go now you've got the hang of it. So thank you for that, Merce. We'll have another go at another one. So get a fresh sheet of paper. And for this next one, I think we'll have a go at drawing a flower in a vase. So just something a little bit different, an inanimate object. So again, just think about, try to visualize a flower in a vase. Think about what makes a flower a flower. So you've got the petals, the stem. Think about the shape of the vase. Perhaps you want to do something quite simple. And I think one thing that I find really useful in this exercise, you may not, but I find it really helpful to not take my drawing implement off the page. So sometimes if you take it off the page, you end up kind of putting, you know, if you're drawing a face, you'll put the eyes up here, the nose down here, and it just kind of gives you that sense of where you are on the paper. So however you find easiest to do it, try and implement that, and if you did it the first time round, learn from any mistakes you might have made the first time that made it difficult to draw the thing that we described. So myself and Mercy, once again, are going to do this along with you. So starting now, if you close your eyes, get your pen ready, and just very quickly try and draw a flower in a vase, beginning now. Right, I think we're both done. Yeah, did anybody cheat? No, Tuck can confirm we didn't cheat. So that one's mine. Let me see, Mercy put mine to shame with that. Brilliant, yeah. So I think, again, you can sort of, if you were to show that to somebody, even though, you know, they're these quite sort of childlike drawings, you would still be able to recognise what they were. So hopefully you've had fun with that at home and you've kind of understood what we were doing there and what the point of it was, and you feel a bit looser. The next bit of this exercise is kind of sticking with the theme, but what we're going to do for the next bit is kind of, it's going to tie into what you're going to be doing later, which will be a bit of portraiture if you choose to go down that route. So employing the exact same technique, we're basically going to do some automatic drawings, but we're going to do some portraiture. So myself and Mercy will be drawing each other, and you can join in at home any way that you want to. So if you've got somebody in the room, a partner, a friend, or a housemate, or somebody who could perhaps be a model for you for this exercise, they could even join in if they want to. And we're going to basically be attempting to draw a face without looking down at the page. So you're not going to have your eyes closed this time, obviously, because you need to be able to see the person that you're drawing. But you're not going to be allowed to look down at the page. And again, try to monitor yourself so you don't cheat, because it kind of takes away the point of the exercise. Myself and Mercy are going to draw each other, but I'm going to have the camera go to Tuck so that you can, if you need to use Tuck to draw as your point of reference, then you can use Tuck's face. You can also perhaps have a go at using yourself. So if you happen to have a mirror nearby, which will be useful later on as well. It's no stress if you don't have one close, but ultimately all you really need is a face to draw. So if you get your drawing implement ready, I think start again with another sheet of paper, a completely fresh sheet. And myself and Mercy, I think we'll take it in turns. Did we take it in turns last week? So we did, yeah. So one person did the drawing first and the other one did it after, then we'll show each other. So we'll show each other at the end what our results are. So do you want to draw me first? Yeah, no pressure. So Mercy's going to attempt to draw me without looking down at the page. So if we could sort of, yeah, so you can see on the screen what's happening in the studio, which is helpful. We didn't have this last time, but I hope this kind of shows you how the exercise works. So if you get your paper ready, and if you're drawing along, are we able to show Tuck as well for this? Right, so I think, yeah, if we could focus on Tuck so people at home, if they do want to draw Tuck, just face up for this bit of the exercise. That would be really helpful. And myself and Mercy are going to begin the challenge, beginning with Mercy drawing me and not looking down at the page. So this is a completely not looking at the page, just drawing what you see, beginning now. I feel like you've got the hair right. I can sense it. Yeah, so if you bring your drawing to an end, Mercy's laughing, so I assume it's a fantastic portrait. Yeah, should we do them at the end? Should we show each other at the end so it's a bit of a reveal? So hopefully you had a go at just doing a really, really quick approximation of Tuck, which I'm sure won't look identically like Tuck, but hopefully that was helpful. And I'm going to now have a go at drawing Mercy. So you can either have another go at drawing Tuck, perhaps having a look at what you did for the last exercise and trying to kind of work that out so you do something slightly more accurate, like figuring out whether you need to keep the pen on the page or, you know, like where the eyes sit on a face, little things like that. But remembering that it's not important that it's an identical representation because it's impossible. It's just about kind of getting confidence and making bold lines and kind of documenting the kind of main features that make somebody's face or make somebody who they are. So I'm now going to have a go at drawing Merce, and then if you could join in, so we'll begin at the same time. I'm not going to look at the page. So you can draw Merce, you can draw yourself, or you can draw whoever's in the room with you and just do a really, really quick drawing of their face. So beginning now, I'm not going to look at the page, just going to try and document Merce. Please don't be offended, it's going to be really bad. Right, and let's go. Right. Okay, please, yeah, it's interesting. So we're going to show each other our portraits of each other now. Yeah, again, I think you would never know that I was the professional artist in this scenario. I'm so sorry you don't look like that, but I think you can really tell that's me, that could be literally anybody, but yeah, I think yeah, that one's actually amazing. I think you should be doing this session instead, Merce. But thank you for that, and I hope you've had fun with that at home and just made some interesting... I kind of like doing this sort of automatic drawing because I think even as just standalone pieces of art and, you know, kind of just abstract line-making exercises, you can end up doing some quite nice, interesting pieces that are kind of compositionally quite cool, or just, you know, like it encourages you to make a bold line because you can't see what you're doing. So I think they're really, really useful just for like a little warm-up if you kind of don't know where to begin with making a piece of drawing, or if you're just scared to make a mark on the page, just kind of challenge yourself to do these. And you do get better and better at them. I know you can't tell from mine that I've been doing it for a while, but I think the more that you do, the more you kind of start picking things out and you'll come up with some really interesting images. So that's that bit of the session done, and I think we'll move on to do some actual figure drawing now. So I'm just going to get these out of the way. So I think it would be useful, bearing that in mind, if we could do some drawings with Tuck as a reference, which will kind of just be the next step on from what we've just done. These, I'm going to allow you to look at the page this time, so I'm going to treat you to that, but we're going to do some really, really quick drawings. So Tuck, if you remember last week, we just did some 1-minute poses. So for these sessions, it didn't really feel imperative that we had a nude model. So that will become more and more clear as the session goes on. But I think it's really important just to kind of have a go at drawing the figure regardless. And I think there's a lot of information you can get down still. And we're going to just do some very quick sort of 1-minute exercises. So with these, you can look at the page, but they'll be so fast that I think you're going to have to kind of employ probably, and hopefully some of the techniques that you may have picked up when you were doing the automatic drawing. So it'll be more about just trying to get down that information, which kind of helps you to just picking out those key bits of information that kind of signify that this is this person. So the aim of it is just to kind of tie in with Phoebe Boswell's exhibition about identity, and there's always little things about a particular person that no matter how they present themselves, you can kind of hone in on and say, right, this is the bit of them that I think perhaps is their essence, or perhaps is what stands out to me. So if you kind of focus in on that for these exercises, you may only get, you know, like a very quick outline of Tuck. You may just like get part of her head. It's so fast that it's going to be very, very difficult to produce a fully fleshed out drawing. But this is all about just kind of getting that confidence and making marks and just kind of experimenting and trying to very quickly document a person. So if we could get you to do some standing poses, and I'll just time them. Just get my timer set up. Yeah, just any sort of nice stood poses. Oh, sorry about this. I should have got the clock. So yeah, these are going to be 1 minute each, and we'll just do a few. So if you prepare your workspace with another sheet of paper, I think I'm going to work bigger for these ones so you can hopefully see a bit better. And yeah, just kind of employing that freedom with which you were doing the previous exercises of drawing. Just try to very quickly get an approximation of Tuck down using just a line. I mean, if you're the sort of person who prefers to draw in the shading, then you can definitely do it that way as well. If you want to just kind of hash out the tonal value of Tuck in a minute, then just however you prefer to work. But I'm going to start the timer now. Myself and Merce will be taking part in the studio too. So tuck's there on the screen for you to reference, and I'll be drawing the same. So starting now, just a 1 minute pose, 1 minute drawing of tuck, beginning now. So that's 45 seconds, just 15 seconds to go. And that's 1 minute. So if you put your pen down and like have a quick look at what you've managed to produce. So as you can see, I just went for a really quick, I really enjoy doing single line drawings for these, because I think it kind of forces you to not be precious again, which is something I'm trying to really kind of hammer home the point of in these sessions, because I think sometimes we can get bogged down in creating a really, really perfect image. And although we will go into some theory, I just want people to kind of get their minds around the idea of, just for the sake of capturing something and being confident with your line work and seeing all the artwork you make as valid, it's really nice to just do these really, really quick drawings. So whatever you've produced for that one, just have a look at the way that you've kind of documented and took it, and think about the ways that you can perhaps get a bit more information in, or perhaps get the kind of body position a bit more accurate next time. Again, like, I just find it personally easier to just not take my implement off the page. So you could give that a try, or you could just try, you know, shading blocks out and see how that works for you. So I think we'll just do one more of these, one more standing position. That one was really nice, to just kind of get people used to that method, and then we will move on to our next exercise. So I'll just get a fresh page ready. So yeah, I'll just get my time ready. Myself and Merce will begin with you again. So once again, just the exact same thing. However you choose to document tuck, I'm using just a charcoal stick for mine, because I just find it easier to make a really quick drawing with these, but you can use whatever in the selection of tools that you've got. And we will begin this drawing starting now, 1 minute. That's 45 seconds almost. And that's 1 minute. So you can see mine again, it's this quite sort of childlike drawing. And yeah, I think with these ones, once again, I kind of personally tend to just focus on creating just quite a bold line drawing, and just kind of thinking a lot about like body positions and how just to get those down quickly. And I think it just kind of psychologically loosens you up for any sort of life drawing, really. And in their own right, I think these always produce quite nice, simple drawings. I think this is almost a technique that's becoming quite popular in art as well, in terms of the things that people hang in their homes, these kind of broken down, simplified, abstract mark making exercises. So again, like, there's lots of ways that you can do these, and you know, you can practice just drawing yourself in this way, and you might want to do that later in the session. The rest of the session, I'm going to give you another exercise that we're going to have a go at, but a lot of the later end of the session, I'll give you different pathways to go down in terms of the kind of art you want to make. whilst kind of doing some bits and bobs myself on here for you to watch. So for the next bit of the session, I think we will go into, I want to kind of just very briefly go over some portraiture theory before we get into the more side of experimental side of things, just because I think it is kind of useful for people. So in your packs that were sent in the email, there were some just little notes on anatomical drawing. So some of you may want to do some self-portraiture for the latter half of this session. And if you were looking to do self-portraiture, which is quite traditional and rooted in accuracy and just kind of getting facial features right, then I'm just going to kind of refer you to some of the things that I sent in your pack. So let's get this out of the way. You should have this either in the form of an email, perhaps you printed it out. Either way, it's fine, but I'll just quickly show you also. So hopefully you can see this clearly. Ideally, you've got it in your email pack and you can open that up. But the general principles of drawing the face, not a lot of people realise this, but there is sort of a method to drawing it, and it's just based on the fact of what kind of exists beyond the face in terms of, you know, like your anatomical structure. So when you're drawing a head, you are actually kind of trying to position things based on the way that a skull is set, for example. So the head can be divided up into sections, and most people, you might see a lot of artists when they begin drawing, if they're drawing a head, they'll begin with a circle like this. So you've got on your page here an example of the way the face is split up, and most faces kind of tend to follow a pattern, and if you begin with that, you can kind of add or take away from it as and when you need. But in general, most faces do kind of follow this sort of even spacing between things. So you tend to have, I'll just do a rough approximation just to kind of help you understand this diagram. This midpoint tends to be where the eyes are set. So if you draw a circle and then you create a little cross in the middle, it kind of helps you to map out how the face is set. So you'll have the eyes kind of set at the midpoint. And a lot of people tend to start with that just as a kind of like way to frame how to get the face kind of accurately positioned out. And then the sort of bottom of your circle here is where the nose tends to go. And then that spacing between the eyes and the nose, if you kind of come down and just kind of observe that spacing, there's usually kind of like an even amount of space between the mouth and the nose. So hopefully you can see the way that's sort of coming together. I'm just kind of approximating a face. And then just little things kind of tend to line up with each other. So ears, the tops of ears, as you can see on here, your brows are slightly above, and the tops of ears are kind of like in line with your brow, and then they kind of end where your nose is. So a lot of the time, you'll see people draw beginning with kind of the eyes, and then they can map things out based on that. So the nose is down here. So once you put your nose in, you know where the ears are going to go. I think this drawing kind of accurately summarizes it. And then there's even spacing between things most of the time. And then you can kind of like build on that depending on the person's individualistic features. So here you've got your hairline. And that circle, if you think about it as based on essentially a skull, so the sphere kind of represents that kind of the back bit of your skull. And if you can imagine, there'd be kind of like the jaw coming down here. So that circle is a really nice way to start if you don't know how to begin a face. I've put another one there that's kind of more feminized facial, traditionally feminized facial features. But ultimately, there's not a huge amount of difference in terms of like the basic foundation of creating a facial structure. So I think if you do want to kind of create a self-portraiture piece in this session and you want to stick something quite traditional, if you've got your mirror and that's the way you want to go about it, then you can refer to this when you're kind of mapping out the face or your own face or, you know, whoever it is you're choosing to draw. So hopefully that's of use. I think this is really useful as well. There should be another sheet in your pack that kind of shows you a little bit about facial features. So this breaks things down a little bit further, and hopefully you can see on your sheet, if not on the screen. things such as eyes, nose and mouth, I think the ways that people tend to get confused about that is that they kind of tend to draw things in this very sort of flat way. So eyes, the way you kind of draw things normally is you learn in this very 2D way. So perhaps you'll draw eyes like that, or, you know, just these kind of lemon shapes. But this kind of really handily shows you the ways in which eyes are actually kind of based on the structure of an eyeball. So if you think about an eyeball, it's not completely flat, and most of the ways that you're looking at the face, it's foreshortened. So you've got this kind of curve where the eye kind of like forms around the eyeball, and there's all these kind of, so instead of like going directly across like that, you're kind of following or observing the fact that it's fitting around an eyeball. So beginning to observe those things, and things like the lower eyelid and the fact that you normally have a little bit of a gap there. Hopefully you can see from my drawing the ways that this tries to kind of show you that once you start thinking anatomically about drawing, it perhaps helps with making things a bit more accurate and less flat. And the same goes for things like noses. I think, I'm trying to think of the way that most people would draw a nose in terms of the way that you learn in childhood. I imagine it's something like that maybe, or I think people do tend to draw things in kind of a flat way. So again, hopefully this sheet that you should have in your pack demonstrates the way that the nose is kind of made up of shapes, and it kind of tends to be based on, I'm not sure what this structure is called. This kind of shows you like the fleshy structure of a nose, but I think this, hopefully you can see, this shape that I'm just drawing at the bottom of the page here. So I always think of noses as structured a bit like this. So you've got the main sort of bone in the middle, or the cartilage in the middle, and then there tends to be kind of a bit of correlation between the way the bottom half or the septum of the nose sits here, and then you tend to have your nostrils like this. So I think most noses follow that sort of structure, and then obviously they're either narrower or wider, or, you know, they kind of, once you get that into your mind, that kind of, I'm not sure what that's called, that shape. It's like an upside down sort of diamond-y type shape. That kind of is useful for when you're drawing a nose, just kind of making sure that you observe that the nose is almost foreshortened, so it doesn't exist on one flat plane. So you've almost got this area here, which will be where the nose is most prominent and comes out, and then you've got your nostrils kind of either side, and then your kind of septum bit underneath, and it tends to kind of come to some sort of prominent point just there. So hopefully that makes sense, and the diagram explains it even further. And there's things that you can do with shading as well, which help to kind of hammer that point home. And then just finally, there's some bits on here about drawing lips as well. And one thing that I find useful with lips, I mean, this kind of goes into, it shows you where all the fleshy parts of a lip are. So you've got this kind of, let's say that's the middle of the mouth. You've got this structure where it's got two balls for the bottom lip, and then the top, the curve of the bow. And again, you're kind of remembering that the lips aren't a sort of flat. They're not flat like that. They tend to be based on the curvature of the skull, and also depending on how fleshy somebody's individual lips are, you'll have this sort of curve which like follows the contours of a face. So that's just me kind of mimicking what is happening on this instructional sheet. But another little tip that I find quite useful is just things like your line work and shading. When you're drawing lips, just paying attention to where the shadows fall. So most people, your lips are obviously prominent, and they stick out a little bit further than, so your nose and your lips stick out a bit further than the bits of your face. Particularly your bottom lip tends to have a shadow underneath it. So there's ways that you can kind of create elements of like more 3D realism by kind of adding a shadow to perhaps the bottom lip. And most people kind of tend to have little shadows in the corners of their mouths as well. I find when I'm drawing, I always kind of look for those little things that kind of change depending on whether people are smiling or not. So like the corners tend to be set back, and the lips aren't completely kind of flat in the middle. You tend to have a shadow at each corner, and perhaps sometimes one underneath the top part of the middle part of the top lip. So hopefully that makes sense in terms of where the shadows fall on a face. You might want to try and observe that when we come to doing the drawing part of the exercise. And if you are drawing yourself for this session, I think you can even just spend a lot of the session just practicing eyes and like referencing this sheet and some of the things that I've talked about and just practicing getting the positions right. So hopefully, if you choose to go down the route of doing quite a kind of technical drawing, just knowing that it's something that kind of people do build over time in terms of how they learn how to do that, and it's quite a lot of practice. But learning the actual anatomical structure of the face and just kind of practicing getting that right, the more of that you do, the more you'll find it easy just to even draw things from your imagination and to kind of feel confident when you're putting an image together. So hopefully, I don't want to spend too much time on the technical side of things, but hopefully if you're choosing to do that, these sheets and some of the things that I've just talked through will be helpful in you kind of practicing some of those skills. So for the next part of the session, I wanted to do some more kind of abstract exercise, which I came up with just to kind of show people the ways that you can create an abstract piece of art and have fun. And I think with abstract art, which is kind of more about breaking things down into shape and colour, and it's more about kind of communicating in a kind of lateral thinking, less literal. So it's almost the opposite of what I've just been talking through in terms of the structure of a face. With the abstract part of the session, it's more about just having fun and trying to communicate a concept or a feeling with the materials that we've got or with whatever you've got at home, which doesn't kind of rely on the literal thing of a face or, you know, a shape or an object. It's all about kind of trying to use the tools that you've got to communicate a concept to somebody. So I'll just talk you through it. And again, you should have with you at home this little worksheet that I've put together. I've actually chopped mine up already in advance. So it's the worksheet which has 6 different emotions, basically, or types of feeling or mood I put together. So there's 3 kind of like more positive ones and 3 more kind of perhaps negative feelings. But the aim of this exercise is to just try, and it's based on the theory that we all probably experience some form of each of these emotions or have done, so we recognize what those are like. And along with these, so you should have either in an email or perhaps you already printed it out, this series of words, but you can actually, if you don't have these things, you can just do it along with us in the studio. So I'll be working on things as well over here. And so you should have those 6 different words, and then you should have 3 different shapes. So I've got here a circle, a square, and a triangle. And what we're going to do in this exercise is basically attempt to, using anything you've got to hand that you feel will kind of enable you to complete this exercise in a way that you feel satisfied by and makes sense, we're going to attempt to convey one of these words using only one of these shapes. So just to kind of give you an example of how it's going to work, I think what I tend to do, which is kind of a more fun way of doing it, is perhaps you could fold up each, if you've got them cut out, then you could fold up each word and kind of do a bit of a random pick out of a hat style thing. So you kind of choose a word randomly and do the same with a shape. Or you could just close your eyes and point at the screen if you've got them on the screen. Or you could just choose for yourself, if you find that easier, just kind of hone in on one thing that you feel kind of compelled to use, that you feel you could make an image from. So for example, I'm just going to select at random one of these emotions and then one of these shapes, and then I'll talk you through the next bit. So just closing my eyes. Right, so I've got anger. Just did that with my eyes closed. So I'll get all of these out of the way. And then I'm going to try and do the same with these shapes. So yeah, so I've got anger and triangles. So what we're going to do for this bit of the exercise, and however you want to do this is fine. If you want to use colour, if you just want to use shape, if you want to, we've got lots of nice materials for collage and stuff here as well, and paints and glue and chalks and all sorts. So maybe use something that you've always wanted to try and use before and just kind of give yourself that opportunity. But the point of the exercise is that we're going to attempt to create a piece of abstract work which is all about communicating the feeling of anger using only triangles. So however you want to do that is up to you, but I want you to try and refrain from drawing an angry face. So this is about getting away from necessarily directly conveying an emotion using only like these very kind of obvious communicative ways. So for example, there's certain colours that certain people associate with the feeling of anger. So whatever that means to you, you've got your kind of selection of coloured paper here, or I've got some colours in the studio, and the paints and things, and perhaps, you know, you'll use a particular colour that you think is, you know, feels angry to look at, or, you know, you'll use kind of aggressive marks to draw triangles, or, you know, like you'll cut a triangle out in a way that's kind of jagged and put that down on the page in a corner, and that's you as anger. However you feel like you want to do that, that is what we want to try and do. But it's all about just having fun. There's no right or wrong way to do this. We'll be doing it alongside you in the studio, so you should be able to watch me working and bits of Merce and Tuck if you want to join in as well. And you can either do the exact same exercise as me, and again, I think don't feel like what I'm doing is the right way to do it, or you can just kind of, if you find it easy, not paying any attention to what I'm doing and just kind of work on it so you're in your own zone and you produce something that is very much centered around what you feel about that particular word. So if you pick yourself an emotion from the 6 of them and then a shape, and just using everything that you've got around you to try and very kind of honestly communicate what that particular emotion feels like to you. If you were going to show somebody, you know, a selection of shapes and colours laid out on a page in a particular way, and then try and read what you meant by that, just try and think of it that way if you're trying to kind of explain to somebody without actual literal words or faces. So I think we'll have 15 minutes at this, so it's not very long, but I'll kind of see how we go. It's one of those exercises that I think you can kind of continue on as and when after, but I want everybody to get a kind of feel for it. So we'll see how we go in the studio with that and just have some fun with it for the next 15 minutes and then see where we're at with it. So to get started, I'm going to get my papers out. If there are any questions about this exercise as well, I think we've got the YouTube link there for you to be able to join the chat and ask if it's not entirely clear. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm just going to put my word and my shape here so you can see what it is that I'm working on. But you might have something totally different. You might have happiness in a square, or a different shape and a different word, so you'll have a completely different body of work. One thing as well I was going to say, in terms of if it is circles that you get, I don't think the shapes need to be entirely accurate, and I think sometimes with this exercise, the way that you draw your shape can almost convey that emotion, if that makes sense. So you might use a bold line to convey, you know, an intense sort of more negative emotion, or, you know, you might kind of use a soft ripped edge to convey something a bit lighter. If you want to draw a circle though, I think I'm on screen there. I found this technique the other day actually that kind of, hope I can do it now, that is quite good for freehanding circles. I'll just do it on a separate sheet of paper. So I've got my tool here, and you can almost use your hand as a compass and just kind of pull the page round. How do you do it again? Yeah, so I've just got my little finger there as like a marker, and then I'm just keeping the charcoal totally still and just pulling. So it's the paper that I'm moving instead of my hand. The hand just stays in the same place. And I don't know if you can see. Yeah, so that's kind of a nice way to, if you did want to, if it's important to you that you get like a nice freehand circle. I'll just show you one more time. So I'm just using my little finger here and then putting the charcoal nib down just to kind of act as a compass, and then just pulling the paper around, keeping everything in one place. Oh, paper's a bit thin. And that's quite a good way of, this one's not as good as the last one. But yeah, that's kind of a way of cheating a circle, little trick there. So I'm just going to leave everybody to get on with their pieces as and how they feel, and we're not going to spend a huge amount of time on it. It's just kind of to get you to understand different ways of making art, and just kind of, again, I keep repeating there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just about trying to kind of break down any barriers you might feel about where to begin with creating a piece of work, and, you know, like utilising those kind of colour theory associations. Are we all okay in terms of questions? And yeah, okay, so everybody seems... Merce and Tuck, are you doing the same as me as well? Yeah. So it'd be interesting. We're each in the studio working on anger with triangles. So it'll be really interesting to see the different images that we come up with, I think, because we're working totally separately. I can't see what anyone's doing. And you probably will find that there's certain similarities because we kind of, with colour theory, is rooted in the concept that there are certain things that we associate with certain, you know, like signs, or, you know, certain colours are emotive in a particular way. And like, I think universally we tend to have similar ideas, but not always. It depends on your experience, you know, your own life, things that, you know, have perhaps you've come across that have reminded you of a thing. They're not always the same. So we'll show each other at the end. And I'm just going to really quickly put something together because I'm trying to talk at the same time, but hopefully you'll get an approximation of the kind of thing we're trying to do. I think mine's going to be a bit dirty as well because my hands are covered in charcoal. Should be okay. It's all fine. We're like a bit of a mess. So we've had about 5 minutes on this, I think it is. But again, I think this isn't necessarily about creating a perfect finished piece of artwork. It's just about kind of trying to experiment with a new way of making work and freeing yourself up to make abstract work, and just thinking about how that might start, how you might kind of begin a piece if you feel stuck for an idea. Just do that on the screen so you can actually see what I'm doing. Struggling to make my mind up about ripping things and cutting them up. I think I'll rip this one. So and again, I think if you can, try and only use the shape that you've been given. So I'm just going to completely only use, some people do end up kind of drawing things over the top of, you know, like their shape, or, you know, using the shape to make something else, which, and that's all totally valid. I think if you can manage to make it as, you know, kind of minimal and abstract as possible, then that's great. But if you feel compelled to add little things in, you know, like whether that's figurative or, you know, kind of lots of bold colour and things like that, then I think just go for that, and definitely whatever just feels right to do to make that image is the best way. So I think we've had... Yeah, I think we'll have another sort of 8 minutes or so on this, but we'll see where we're at in that time to see where Tuck and Merce have gotten to gauge it. And the nice thing about collage as well, you can kind of move things around. You don't even have to necessarily commit to things. You can just kind of position them on the page while you're thinking about how you want something to come off. But some of you may just be using paint as well. I think that's quite a nice way to mix colour and, you know, just get that kind of exact thing that you want going on. really funny watching my hands on a screen. I just really clumsily putting things together. But hopefully you'll get a sense at the end of what it is we're trying to achieve. Merce and Tuck, how are you getting on? Are you feeling like you've got something you'd be happy to share if we wrap in about 5 minutes? Yeah, so it should be quite a quick thing. I think these things are quite fun as well because it kind of takes you back to the kind of stuff that you perhaps did in school where you're a bit less precious and you just made a mess and weren't so fussed about perfecting things. I do think that a lot of arts education, maybe controversial opinion, but it kind of beats it out of people, this notion that anything can be art and, you know, like having to make things look exactly like the work of another artist or, you know, look exactly like a bowl of fruit can lead people to believe that they're not good at art or they can't do it. But I think stuff like this is still art, and I think the more that you do it, the more that you kind of find the thing that it is that you're into. It might not be that you're into necessarily drawing a photorealistic picture, you know, it might be that you're kind of into expressing yourself with colour and shape and composition. So this is just kind of a way to experiment with that, and the little exercise we did at the beginning, hopefully, you know, if you enjoy it, you can have another go at it. And that might be your way into figuring out the bit of art that you really enjoy. So last couple of minutes on this. I think I'm going to leave mine there because, again, I said this a little bit last time, but I think it's really nice to kind of figure out as well when you feel that something's finished. So no matter how much time I give for each exercise, you may finish before, you may finish afterwards, but everybody kind of has their own pace, and it's not that you need to fill the time by doing more and more and more to your piece necessarily. You could just kind of learning to like step back and have a look at what it is that you've produced and figuring out if that feels like it's finished is also really important in sort of making your own art, I think. So I think we'll bring that exercise to a close, and shall we have a look at what each other have done? So in the studio we were working with triangles and the word anger. So I'm saying, Tuck, if you want to show us your pieces. Cool. Oh, wicked. Oh, amazing. So I'll just move these in a little bit. So yeah, as you can see, I think hopefully at home it made sense as well. I think both Merce and Tuck have kind of understood the point of what I was trying to do with this. And yeah, we've all produced completely different pieces of work, but they all kind of convey, I think another good way of doing this exercise is just to kind of, perhaps you can do it with somebody else, you know, it's something you can carry on now that you've got the tools for it. But sometimes just doing it and then showing somebody and asking them what they think it is that you've produced or what they think it is that you're trying to convey. And I think you do get that from these. So it's interesting that we've each gone for, you know, like the reds and yellows and those kind of fiery colours for anger, because I guess most people do kind of associate, I didn't want to kind of like hint towards it when I was describing it, but people do associate certain colours with certain feelings. And I think red, it's an advancing colour, which means that it kind of like jumps out at you, and it does kind of have those connotations of stop or danger or warning. So it makes sense that we've all put little bits of red in there, and like, yeah, this kind of, I think triangles work quite well for that exercise as well because of the shape being kind of almost, you know, it's pointy, isn't it? So I think if you ended up with anger and circles, perhaps that would have felt a bit less obvious in terms of the way that you documented that feeling, and perhaps you had to kind of think in a different way to try and convey that emotion with a circle than you might have had to do with a triangle. So that was quite a nice one, and hopefully at home you've got something you know, it probably won't be anything like these in terms of the way that you've worked, but hopefully you've managed to do something and have a little bit of fun with that exercise. I think we will, for the next part, we've got that one. So I think we can, perhaps we'll do one more actually, just to kind of have a go at doing the opposite of what we just did, and a similar time frame. And then for the end of the session, we're going to have a go at documenting tuck using a similar practice. So that'll be an option for you. Basically, if you want to do some self-portraiture, then you can either do a kind of traditional drawing using some of the things that I talked through about documenting anatomically the face, or you could do a portrait of yourself, thinking about all the things that make you you, and perhaps using some colour theory and shape again. So there's lots of options for the end, but I think we'll just quickly do another one of these just to kind of get a sense of how to put together something that perhaps documents a very different type of emotion. So I'll pick as a word and a shape, and we'll just all have a really quick go at doing another one. So let me get them all, just move these to one side. So I think we should, because we did anger, perhaps we'll have a go at doing a kind of more, an emotion with more positive connotations, and see how we each depict that and how that kind of comes off. So we've got, where's my words? So I'm going to pick love, and I think we should try and do this with circles, just because we've done kind of a jaggedy shape before. And you can do this all at home again. You can kind of pick your own word in your own shape, or you can do it along with us and try and come up with something. And just kind of, I think this is an interesting one, because I think that word probably means different things to different people. So we probably will, again, have something quite different. And I want you to try and refrain from drawing love hearts and things like that. So that's the kind of go-to in terms of, this exercise is about kind of trying to get away from those things that have become synonymous with certain feelings and emotions, and trying to kind of really exercise your brain in finding other ways to communicate. So hopefully it all makes sense in the way that we're going to work for the last part of the session, and you can kind of tap into this when it comes to either depicting tuck or yourself or your chosen subject. Some of you might want to continue doing this exercise, but I'm hoping that for the final bit of the session that you will be able to see that connection between your use of colour and shape and composition, so that if you are depicting a figure and you choose to do it without line, you know, if you choose to do it in a kind of less photorealistic way, you can kind of capture the essence of somebody in the way that you can capture the essence of these words. So we'll have another go, and yeah, so in the studio we're using the word love and circles. So if you guys want to begin as well. So I think, yeah, we'll perhaps have about 10 minutes on this one, or I'll see where we're at with it again. I don't think we need to spend a huge amount of time on this. Again, it's really just to kind of like loosen you up and get you used to the way of thinking about using colour and shape to communicate things, essentially. I'm really trying to like use non-obvious colours for this one. I'm going to challenge myself. And yeah, perhaps on this one, if you're at home, you want to use different tools or something, just to give yourself the chance to have a go, have a play around. And also just colour composition too. It may be that you kind of, are less faithful to trying to communicate the word and you're just thinking more about which colours you think are nice together, you know, or just little ways of kind of making it an interesting experiment for yourself. So I'm having a go at my circle technique here. So I want one circle that's obviously a circle, but also the accuracy of shapes definitely doesn't matter. I think sometimes you can deliberately draw things to, they're just a guideline really, the shape, just to kind of give you something to play with. Because I think often with abstract technique, it's hard to know where to begin or what you should draw, as it were. So it's just more for like a bit of a foundation. And I think that's it. I think some people believe that if you, creative talent is just about naturally having the idea or the concept ready and like being able to go, but sometimes you do just need that little prompt. So exercises like this are quite good for just kind of making you think about stuff. So I think we'll just do a few, last sort of 5-ish minutes on this. But I'll keep an eye on the studio activity as well and sort of use that as a gauge of how you might be getting on at home. I'm going to try and use some colours that you'll be able to see better at home. Saying, Tuck, how are you getting on? You have a couple more minutes? No worries. I think I'm going to leave mine there. It's not totally turned out how I wanted it to, but I'm just going to leave that as an example and talk you through it when I see yours. So I'll just put the... And yeah, you may find that you end up doing just really, really quick. You know, it's, again, I'm really a fan of timed, very quick exercises. These are quite nice to do quickly, just, you know, perhaps just doing like a load of them. You can stitch all those together and you've got quite a nice kind of like patchwork abstract piece, or, you know, especially if you're using paint and you end up doing lots of like different nice paintings that could be kind of stitched together. I think that's a really nice way of just beginning with an abstract piece of work. So I think we're just, I'm going to say masterpieces. Almost done. Tuck, do you feel ready to share your piece? Cool. Okay, we will. Yeah. I mean, if you've just got something, mine's literally, just a really quick thing. But yeah, we'll share what we've done in the studio. So we were working with the word love and circles, and hopefully you've similarly had a go at doing a different type of emotion, abstract, amazing. Beautiful, thank you. Yeah, so, yeah, I'm really pleased that we haven't all used the same sort of format or colour palette, actually. Nobody's done just lots of pink and red hearts or anything like that. It's kind of everybody's kind of in the studio tried to think outside the box a little bit. And yeah, I think these are, again, you can tell what the emotion is, that it's a positive feeling. Like we've all kind of almost gone for, because we've used circles, that feeling of like bubbles or, you know, something radiating, or like all of these, I think, in their own way, you can tell what we were trying to communicate, and that it's not the anger that we were doing previously. I'll just get these back out again so you can see the difference. So hopefully that kind of illustrates. So these were the angry and the love ones. And I think even that as a composition is quite nice, like those colours and shapes all together. You know, if you kind of keep working on these sort of things, you can end up with some really interesting pieces. So yeah, I think we'll leave it there for that exercise. Thank you so much, Mercy and Tuck, for helping me demonstrate that, and I hope it all made sense at home as well, and that you enjoyed it. So for the final bit, I think we will go on to do some, basically employing some of these techniques in either a life drawing or self-portraiture, or if you choose, you can just carry on doing those exercises that we've just been doing with the words and the shapes if you felt that was something you quite enjoyed. So yeah, this bit of the session is going to be quite loose, and we're going to have Tuck on hand again as our life model. So you may find it useful if you kind of don't tune in to doing things abstract with shapes and just kind of words and stuff. It may be that you find it useful just having Tuck there as a figurative, as a way to kind of begin a figurative piece. And again, I think there'll be people of different levels of ability in this, so you may just want to do a kind of live drawing of Tuck straightforward, or we could, perhaps you want to do a piece that is inspired by the shapes that Tuck's making with their body, from bits of paper again and paint, and just a kind of abstract exercise where you try and capture something about Tuck, or you capture an emotion, or you capture a mood just using shape, but kind of using that body outline as a bit of a kind of base. Or if you want to do a self-portrait, again, it's up to you if you want to use your mirror and use some of the techniques that we talked about in terms of anatomical drawing. Try and capture yourself by kind of using these new ways of, you know, like focusing in on like honing those like eyeballs with the curvature and noses with that kind of observation of shadow and foreshortening. We've got about 45 minutes left of this session, and I think, again, I don't want people to feel rushed about this part of the session, so I'm hoping that there's enough for you to take away that if you want to continue on after we finish, then you can, or, you know, if you want to just kind of wrap up when we finish, then that's fine. It's just kind of a loose way of creating together. I'm going to be working on, I think, probably like a combination of abstract and line-based pieces using Tuck as a reference, but hopefully within that, you can kind of tap into the essence of this session was about trying to kind of capture things without just standard lines. So if you are feeling able to utilise colour or just any element which kind of is more than just about a straightforward drawing, then that would be a really good way to kind of make the best of this session, I think. So I will, Tuck, if you could do a sort of laid down pose again with your throw thing over. So I think we'll go for, perhaps we'll try and do 2 20-minute sessions, seeing how we go. In fact, let me just check the time. In fact, yeah, I think we'll go for maybe a half an hour one would make more sense, just so people aren't kind of, because we've got like different options, I think it would be a bit easy if we just do a bit of a longer session and then people can kind of, yeah, catch up. So yeah, I think if we focus on trying to, if you are drawing Tuck, then yeah, perhaps don't stress too much about, unless it is that you want to do a kind of textbook drawing, then that option's there for you too. So could you perhaps like have that round your, I think the red is really nice, like next to your lipstick colour. Yeah, just so we're not kind of getting bogged down in the details of like an outfit. Yeah, that's beautiful. So yeah, so it's just focusing on things like this, you know, the reds in, or the colour palette. We've got really nice reds and greens and that yellow colour, and perhaps you want to just begin by blocking Tuck out in those colours and then kind of like hashing out some details, or, you know, like whichever way you want to approach this. If you are using Tuck, perhaps if you were with us last week and you focused more on getting that accuracy, you want to do the opposite of that and just get the shapes and the colours down and like whatever mood it is that's created by this scene. So there's lots of options here, and again, there's no right or wrong way to do it. I think I'm going to have a go at combining the two. So I'll be working along with you, but essentially we're just going to spend the last bit of the session just kind of working through this and however each person wants to do it. And I think if you are doing a self-portrait, again, just maybe it's that you want to begin using a sheet of paper that is already a colour and you want to work into that and, you know, kind of just put together some sort of collage that you feel represents you rather than doing a direct drawing of your face. So there's lots of different ways to approach this. Hopefully that all makes sense, and we'll begin, and we'll be working in the studio too alongside. So I think as somebody who spends a lot of time doing these very sort of accurate drawings, I'm going to actually go for something a bit more abstract. So I haven't planned this, I've got no idea how it's going to pan out, but we'll see. I think it'll be a good challenge for me. We've also, I mean, we've got some quite a nice range of materials here and that you've been sent in your packs as well, but I do think, and I mentioned it last week as well, that there's that famous saying, a bad workman blames his tools or something, but one of my favourite art teachers said to me that that isn't true when it comes to art, because it does make a difference, the tools that you have in terms of the work that you can produce, so it's nonsense. It's really nice to have nice brushes and nice paints and things, and they can make you feel more confident as an artist too. So if you're struggling with, I mean, these are quite, you know, just standard paints and things like basic ones that you can get, which you can do something really interesting with, but I think don't feel disheartened by, you know, if you're trying to create something and you can't quite get there with the materials you've got, because there's infinitely different ways and different more quality sort of materials that you can use. These would just kind of just have some fun with and mix colours, and once you kind of feel a bit more confident, you can commit to perhaps buying, you know, some quality paints and things and nice brushes, which do actually really help you to put together the image that you want to in a different way that makes you definitely feel more confident. So I'm being quite literal with mine with the sort of colour blocking, just as a kind of little experiment. But again, no right or wrong way. You might not want to even use the colours that are in the view of Tuck. And again, if you don't feel confident drawing your own face, which is actually quite difficult, you can have a go at drawing Tuck's face. I think hopefully there's lots of options here for you to kind of have a go at. It's actually quite difficult to draw your own face in terms of even just psychologically. It's weird just to stare at yourself, but it's good practice, and I think the more you do it again with anything, a lot of art is just about practicing things over and over again. So I'm just using quite loose, torn shapes. I quite like as well just sometimes challenging yourself to not have any control over what it is you're doing and seeing what you come up with, especially if you're someone like me who's quite used to doing things in this very sort of structured way. Sort of annoying. I really like having control over the final image, but it's a good little exercise to force yourself to not. One thing that would be useful as well, if it is the abstract side of things that you are kind of enjoying mostly about this session, is I've deliberately sort of not gone into it in this session because I think you could do an entire session just based on it, but looking at something called the rule of thirds, which is a really useful tool for understanding about composition. So that's the rule of thirds, as in like a third, 1/3. That is just phenomenally helpful for anything, and it's almost a sort of mathematical formula, and lots of nature is structured in that way, and you'll notice it once you learn about it if you haven't already. If you've already studied art, then you probably definitely know what that means, but it's really useful in kind of getting the confidence in understanding why some compositions work better than others and why some things are more pleasing to the eye than others. So the rule of thirds is a really good thing to look at if it is the abstract side of things that you want to do more of, and you kind of feeling like things aren't working for you. That might kind of make things make more sense. And you can definitely sort of combine mediums as well. So I think looking at this, I'd quite like to just experiment with a mixture of collage and line work. Just kind of playing around with getting different textures and different kind of feelings and qualities of line conveyed through the image. So you can do that in lots of different ways, whether it's kind of cutting shapes out with scissors or ripping them, or, you know, like perhaps using a line or perhaps using the edge of your chalk to create some shading. And just kind of figuring out and getting comfortable with all the different ways that you can document a person or an object, or ways that aren't necessarily subscriptive to really, really kind of regimented, traditional realistic drawing. So I think I'm going to stand just to get a bit of a better perspective. And with mine, I'm sort of employing some of that loose drawing style that we did earlier in the session, again, because for me, these are kind of a nice way of moving away from some of the kind of work that I tend to do for my, you know, day job, which is very kind of structured, strict brief type stuff. It's quite nice when you get an opportunity as an artist just to do something that's a bit more kind of loose and fun. So hopefully that's the same for people at home. I find sometimes also using the flat of your tool rather than the sharp point kind of, again, encourages you to be a bit less precious about the lines you're making because you've got less control. So if you find that you're getting bogged down with a tiny detail, sometimes just using like a flat edge or like a slightly wider, chunkier drawing tool kind of helps sort that out. I think when you draw, if you've kind of like learned about art, it's quite difficult sometimes to not just be quite literal and try and perfect things as well. So it's a real challenge for me as well, to do things that are a bit more abstract sometimes. Sort of trying also to see as an opportunity to just use different types of tools and not be too precious about it and just see what you come up with. It might be that you sort of carry these things through as well, perhaps if you've never used like collage before. It's always interesting to see the ways you can kind of get that into your work, or even just like the types of shape that you're forced to make when you rip things rather than chop them out. I think another useful tip for abstract, or this kind of, less literal portraiture, sometimes just stepping back from your piece and having a look at it and seeing if it kind of is pleasing to you visually. So a good way to kind of like remove, or, like not kind of think so much about getting bogged down in the details of, say, hair or clothes or like little bits of stitching, just to kind of step back and look at the piece as a whole and think, right, does the weight of what's kind of happening on that side of the page, is there too much there, and how can I balance that? Or, thinking more about the piece as an entire piece than just kind of little tiny details, and kind of thinking about the whole page working together and all the things that are happening on it that kind of work together in unison when you step back. So I think I sort of started out doing what kind of was based on a fairly literal piece based on Tuck and their body position, but it's kind of, as I'm moving through the piece, getting a bit more abstract, and I'm kind of enjoying just the process of thinking about whether I like certain lines in certain places and certain colours, and just having Tuck as that basis from which to work, I think is a good starting point, but you can kind of loosen it up a bit as you go on and just kind of enjoy just the process of making something abstract and putting colours together and creating a mood. So I wasn't going to add this representative of Tuck's arm, but I felt when I stepped back that there wasn't enough brown in the piece, and it's hard to explain because I think everybody has a different sense of what is kind of pleasing, but in general there are rules to things, and you sort of, the more of this sort of thing you do, the more you learn about balance and how much of one thing kind of is needed to balance out another, and what to take away and what to add in. So, I mean, I'm aware that I'm talking mainly in terms of the abstract side of this this part of the session, which, you know, I think the main goal for this bit of the session was, or the second session rather, was to kind of move away from traditional drawing techniques. So hopefully it's useful. But if you are working on a more kind of self-portrait style piece, just using line, hopefully that's going smoothly enough that you're just having fun with some of the tools that we've provided in terms of the worksheets and things. So for my piece, I've kind of tried to do a combination of depicting and capturing the vibrance of Tuck, because I know Tuck is a friend as well, and depicting that kind of energy, but also using the background colour for reference and shape. But then in terms of where I'm putting the kind of dark and light areas and certain bits about it that I'm adding to it are more about just trying to capture the essence of the person and trying to create a compositionally interesting piece which kind of feels visually satisfying to look at, if that makes sense. So just kind of, for example, I felt that I needed to balance the top corner with some dark down here. And these kind of things, as I say, will become more kind of natural the more that you do this kind of exercise, and just kind of opening yourself up to it by doing these quite quick things is a good way to kind of get used to it and becoming comfortable and not kind of worrying too much about what direction things are going in. And this is, I don't know if you're all necessarily familiar with the kind of work that I make normally, but this is very different to what I tend to do. So it's a bit of a departure for me too, just kind of experimenting with something that's not my day-to-day. So just a quick time check. We've got another 10 minutes-ish on this. So you can either continue with this piece, or if you feel that that one's done, begin another piece or work into this one again. Remember to not necessarily overwork a piece or feel like you've got to fill the time. If you're doing a life drawing of a self-portrait, then this might be the time that you want to begin sort of shading things. So I'll just grab that example from before. If I can find it. Oh, I think it's in my sketchbook, isn't it? I'll just show you on here. So this might be the point at which, if you've kind of laid down some of the features, just kind of that bit of, I'll once again show you how I tend to structure a nose. So there's the bridge, and if you've got your nostrils here, you find that shadows fall in particular places, like perhaps under the little septum bit and under the nostrils, depending on where the light's coming from as well, but there does tend to be rules about where things fall. And then like the end of your nose tends to be the bit that kind of sticks. So sometimes there's a little bit of shadow here as well. Hopefully that's clear. And then the mouth, again, as a kind of 3D facial feature on your printout. You've got the positioning of where the kind of fleshy bits of a lip are and where the bow is. But then, you know, if you're thinking about shading, then just having a look at where the shadows are falling on your face. And as a rule, again, it tends to be kind of under your bottom lip. Sometimes there'll be little bits of shadow in the corners, perhaps, you know, under like the middle bit of your top lip. So just trying to observe those bits and really paying attention to things. So I'm going to move this out of the way and just do something really, really quick for the last part of the session, which is, so I think we've got perhaps another 5 minutes that we'll spend on this. How are you getting along, Mercedes? Yeah? Feeling? Have you gone for like a collage-y type thing as well? Oh, cool, yeah. Wicked. Well, yeah, we could perhaps have a look at yours as well when we, if you're happy to. Just forcing you to constantly share your work. Sounds silly, but sometimes also a good way to force yourself to think in an abstract way is almost to squint at your subject, so that you don't kind of focus so much in on particular details. Because I think I kind of tend to get really, really bogged down in details, having like spent so much time learning how to draw this in this particular way that documents a figure really accurately. So just kind of breaking things down into shapes and colour. So for my last 5 minutes, I think I'm just going to do literally like the most basic, simple abstract shape-based thing. So I've actually sort of reverted back to just using some of the really simple shapes that we used in the earlier exercise, just lines and circles and just kind of mark making really, and just thinking more about how to make a satisfying composition, which I'm not sure this is, but but yeah, just having a little experiment, a little play. And trying to make the simplest version of what I'm looking at. So yeah, I think we can just one more minute on this and then we'll have a look at what we've produced here in the studio, and hopefully even if you've not finished, then you've done something which you feel proud of and happy that you kind of tried something new, or just developed part of your practice that you haven't had to go at for a while, or just learned something. So we will share ours shortly. Are you about ready, Mercedes? Okay, let's have a look. Cool. Oh, wicked. Thank you. Oh, that's beautiful. Get mine out. So yeah, there you can just sort of see. This was just a really quick one that's not even stuck down that I made as well. And these are Mercedes using paper and paint. So yeah, Mercedes gone for more of a kind of a traditional painting one on the right, and then just like a colour-based one, which is really interesting because I think they're all took. They're really obviously took, but they're so different each piece. So I think it's just like a kind of a fun exercise and a fun way, again, a bit like what we were doing initially, where we were just trying to get down that bit of basic information. I think, yeah, these are really kind of capturing, and just the background as well, I think just kind of adds something to that. Like it's really vibrant and you can have fun with the way that you put colour together and stuff. But yeah, I think that's all we've got to go through today. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed that session, and if you took part in both and you got something out of each one that was quite different. And if this was your first one, then thank you so much for joining us as well. And I hope that it all kind of was easy to follow and made sense, and that, whatever you take away from it, perhaps you begin thinking differently about art and feel more confident that you can make art and that it's all forms of it are valid. So again, these are just really, really kind of nice exercises to start, and you can do them with any materials really that you've got at home. You can use a mirror, you can do yourself. You can, just objects around your house that you kind of want to do a really simple picture of, just using bits of paper and colour, or, just trying to capture the essence of somebody with colour, that kind of thing. It's just a really fun way to kind of enter into making art that isn't kind of so regimented and structured and kind of fits within these kind of particular parameters. So yeah, I think we'll leave it there. And if you've got work that you want to finish, then continue, please do. That would be great. And thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to hand over to Merce.
Please stand in front. Hi everyone. I hope you enjoyed the session today. Thank you so much, Kim, for your insight and your tips and guiding us through both workshops last week and this week. I personally got quite a lot out of it, actually.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I hadn't been fancy for years, so it kind of got me back into doing it. So I hope that worked for some of you at home as well, and piqued your interest of people who are just beginning as well. Please let us know what you think about these workshops, and if you wanted to see more of them, either on social media, or you can email us at info@na.org.uk. And basically, this was our last event of this season. We're going to be closing for Christmas, and hopefully see you all in January with a brand new season of events. You can keep track of what we're doing on our website. Hopefully we can open in January with Phoebe Boswell's exhibition. So watch this space. And once again, Kim, thank you so much.
My pleasure, thank you.
For your sessions here. Have a good evening, everyone.